Hi, everyone. Welcome to the May 25th, 2021 edition of Compassion Chats. I'm Susan Marshall, author of Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours, and your host for these Compassion Chats, which we started with three primary ideas in mind. The first and foremost is to let you, our caregiver group, know that you are not alone. We often feel that way sometimes, and sometimes by design, right, when we're feeling nutso, but you're not. Second idea is to invite you to come join us as you are. You don't need to clean up. You don't need to add, jewelry and all that kind of thing. We want you to come hang with us. Just spend time learning about other caregivers. And the third idea is to bring really neat people who are well qualified across a big range of services provided to caregivers. We bring them to you not only as the organizations, but as the people with the hearts behind those organizations to help you along the way. This session is being recorded, so I would ask our participants to please mute yourself early on in this conversation. We will open it up to Q&A toward the end, and if there's a question that occurs to you that you don't want to forget, throw it into the chat. We'll make sure that we cover it before we're done. Our guest this evening, I'm so excited to introduce, is Marianne Gariti. As those of you who have been on these chats before know, I had no idea this whole community of people existed. And Marianne, I think you were probably the first person that I met right after Mom's Gone Missing came out. And I was absolutely charmed, not only to learn about the company that you have, but how you got there. So welcome to you. I'd love to start with that kind of personal journey. It's a very eclectic one. You're a bit of a Renaissance woman.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so it was great meeting you. We were connected by a mutual friend of ours, so it's always interesting. And then from there, I was able to meet Adele. So it's interesting how these networks all work out. It's really beneficial. Yeah, so basically, 25 plus years ago, I went to college and I studied recreational therapy to work with seniors and keep them active throughout their adult life. So I've always had this desire to work with seniors. And then just kind of along my journey, I worked with my husband, was a physician. So I worked in some clinics with him. We owned a couple of businesses. And along the way, I started doing electronic recycling. And we sold that company and I started working with St. Vincent de Paul. And from there, people were calling St. Vinny's and saying, I have all these items in my closets and my attics, but I can't physically, get them down the stairs to donate them. And then I'm like, boy, that's kind of an interesting idea. So I started looking around to see if there are companies who help seniors with this downsizing. And I a friend of mine who worked for Comfort Keepers told me, there's this whole organization called the National Association of Senior Move Managers. And literally, I stopped working in St. Vinny's, and it just happened, the timing was right, that there was a conference for the National Association of Move Managers, and I called Mary Kay, is in charge of it, and I called her up, and she's like, well, why don't you come to conference? So I went there without even having a business. And the funny thing is, I had to make business cards for myself, so I called my company A Little Help. So I'm just going in totally blind, like, oh yeah, I can help downsize. It's really not that hard. You store it a little bit. And then I got there and I'm just introducing myself with my company name, A Little Help. And people gave me this really weird look, right? And so then once I decided to start my business and I got into a couple of pro bono jobs, I realized it's a lot of work. So that was not a good name. So then I kind of started recreating what name I was going to call myself. And I came up with Moving Forward, because it's not a little work. It's a lot of work. So from start to beginning, there are so many pieces that need to fall into line to make the transition easy for our clients. The thing I learned once I found out about NASM, the association, that I loved, is there's 1,000 of us around the country. And what's interesting is we're all very different. So every company, there are very few franchises, in NASM, which is the name we call it, NASM, the association. But for the most part, we're all individual business owners. Some of us only do organizing, some only do packing and unpacking. Some of us have a moving company like Moving Forward does, and we do clean outs and we work with realtors. So people are able to take the business model under the code of ethics through NASM, and then from there create the business that works best for them. So that's what I love about it. So and then what's really nice is if I have a client who's moving from Wisconsin to California, I could reach out to somebody in my organization. We could do the sorting and packing and arrange the mover in Wisconsin, and then connect them with somebody from our trade organization to help them with the unpacking, settling in at the new community in a different state. And so we call those job shares, where we just connect, we have our part in the beginning and they have their part at the end, or they'll call me if there's somebody's moving into, Wisconsin, and we just kind of help each other to make that transition smooth. So that's probably one of the biggest keys of being part of NASM. And then of course, just the things you learn from a network of people doing the same thing. Some of these business owners have been doing this for 20 years, so they just have a wealth of knowledge that has definitely helped me shape the business that I want. And then from there, I kind of chose to kind of go into pretty much we take on everything. So if there's anything a family needs, we could take it on. So we're pretty much a full service, just because that's kind of how I like it to go. So yeah.
There is a whole lot that you just said. Holy smokes. What I'm really fascinated by, Marianne, is you've got so many interests in so many different things. What made you, the conference is important, right? And I want to talk a little bit more about the National Association of Senior Move Managers. I think James Cademan mentioned them to me when I did a podcast with him, which is how you and I met. Right. Like, National Association, who knew that even existed? And now we're hearing there are members across the country. So I want to come back to that in a minute and talk about how do we find you? I suspect it's probably easier than we realize. But first of all, I want to, you've been interested in so many different things. How did you put that together into a business that you can tell people about what you do so it makes sense?
Sure, and it's there's a lot of components to our business, right? And so I would say sometimes when someone says, oh, call Marianne if you need to move your parents, they'll sometimes call us up and think we're a moving company. And I really try hard to tell people that we are really anything but a moving company. So if you kind of look at us as my company as like a project manager, basically we have all these little spokes in our little circle, and moving is one spoke, but it is not the most important part by any means. So I consider myself for the most part a downsizing company. One thing we do is move. The other thing we do is clean houses. The other thing we do is send things to donation. The other thing we do is, bring in auctioneers. So it's all these little spokes around the center with the move manager being in the center to make sure all these parts of the downsizing process happen. So when we often do these new client visits, and sometimes it's too much because the family is so overwhelmed at these new client visits that sometimes we just break it up. So we say, okay, right now let's just focus on, that you're ready to move into a senior community or ready to downsize to a condo from a house. Let's just take it in a one piece at a time. And we have to break it down like that. Otherwise, if we throw all the things out there, they're like, oh my God, I can't even, it's too much. There's too many details. So I think it's important just to kind of break it down and figure out what our clients and their families are needing at that moment. And then they're comfortable then with that spot. And then we kind of go on from there. And then we say, okay, so now, now the move part is all settled. So how are we going to handle the things? Are we going to ship some items to family members? And then we take on these other parts that need to happen. But we break it out into pieces. Otherwise, it's just way too much, way too many details.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about here every month is the emotion around so much of this, whether it's Alzheimer's and dementia, which has really been the focus of our compassion chats as we imagine them. But so many of the services and the people we're bringing to these chats go way beyond. Debbie last month told us about working with young children and families and units. So I appreciate what you just said about coming in and starting with the immediate. How do you assure me as a caregiver? First of all, I'm emotional about this whole thing. I have no clue what to do first, second, third. I don't want to screw it up. And I'm extremely conscious, if you will, of the financial aspect of this, because the rest of the family is saying, why are you paying somebody to do this? Just go dig in and do it yourself. So how do you manage kind of that whole ball of emotion and untangling while you assure your clients that you're not going to nickel and dime them until they go to the point where like, whew, why did we ever start this?
Right. Yeah, those are really good points to bring up. I think that it's just super interesting. So again, it's this new client visit. So usually we're meeting there with the client in transition when moving, and typically there could be a family member present, right? And I think what we do is we kind of set the stage by saying, okay, so this is a big move. You know, you feel like you're ready to do it. The house, there's so much work involved here, and you found a beautiful community you want to move into. The way that we usually start off is we just kind of say, okay, so we try to figure out, okay, what are the most important things in your house that you love and use on a daily basis? And then they get a little comfortable, like, yeah, this is my favorite chair. I like this little end table with these little trinkets. These pictures mean a lot to me on this wall. We kind of go through the kitchen, and I ask them questions like, do you do much cooking? Are you doing much baking anymore? Like, no, usually, I'll be eating in the dining room, so we don't need a lot of the kitchen items. And then I say, okay, no problem. So, usually it's very common. We'll bring, a few boxes of kitchen items with us. And then we kind of move along to the bedroom and we discuss, okay, so, this bed is still, the mattress is comfortable. Do you still like it? Would you like to bring this bed, or do you feel like you want to get a different bed? We kind of talk through all the areas of their living space. And lots of times we don't even tag the items as we're having these discussions. And then and then of course, it's very common we're in a 2,000 square foot home and they're moving to a 900 square foot apartment. So we kind of say, okay, you probably don't use this extra bedroom very much. So we'll come back to this a little bit later, and then we'll discuss the items in this room because you don't use them on a daily basis. So I think it's really important just to kind of walk through the house, identify what the client needs at that moment for them to feel comfortable. It's all about, you want to create just a smaller space of all their precious items, so they feel like it's like their house, but it's a smaller version of it. So I think it's super important just to do that walkthrough and just discuss what's most meaningful to them. From there, then we say, okay, we're going to have my staff come in. We're kind of going to discuss these items. We'll pack them for you. On move day, my guys will come. We'll bring things from point A to point B. My staff will unpack everything. So at the end of move day, things are settled pretty well, and it looks like it's your home again. So we're not going to leave you with boxes around. We're going to have the bed made, the toaster plugged in, the coffee pot ready to go. So it's going to be ready to go on at the end of move day. So we're not going to just move you and leave these boxes and come back a week later. And then we're not going to request that the family helps unpack the boxes. In fact, we try to encourage the client to spend the day with a family member, maybe go out for lunch or hang out in the common area of the new community and meet people. So on move day, lots of times my staff is just independent of the family members or the client, because we want to quickly unpack to get that set up. So at the end of move day, our goal is just to make it comfortable. So I kind of try to display that idea during the new client visit. And then I touch on things like, I see your daughter lives in New York. If there are items that are really special to her family, then we'll arrange to ship those items to her. It's no problem. We'll probably focus on it after the move. So I kind of pick things like important things that need to happen. I just tell them, okay, let's just focus on the move right now, but then we'll come back and we'll it's no problem. We'll ship those to New York. We work with Salvation Army. They are really needing beds right now. So if you're not using these beds in the extra bedroom, we can get these beds to the Salvation Army families who truly need beds right now. So we kind of touch on the points of the items that they're not using, to then say, okay, we have avenues for these items. So we're not going to get a dumpster. Dumpster doesn't even come into a conversation almost, unless it's, a unique situation. Our goal is to tell them, okay, if your family is, kind of picking out what they like, we'll get those to your family. If there are items that could be sold, we'll sell them. If there are items that people need, we'll get those to donation. So we touch on those items, but really we're focusing on the client and just saying, okay, we want to make you comfortable in this new space. I have wonderful staff. We'll go room by room, pack up the items that are most precious. To be honest, money doesn't come into play as a big negative. Like, I feel like I leave a quote sheet, and usually we have a price system that says, okay, I think we'll be here 50 hours. So I'll kind of highlight how much I think that's going to cost. It's very seldom that it comes into play. And if there is a situation where there's a lot of money going out, then I do tell the client that sometimes we can get paid when their house sells. So that's kind of something unique to my company, because we can say, okay, there's a ton of work to do to, once we have you moved, we have to come back and clean out this, 2,000 square foot house. And it might be too much money for them to think about right now. So we say, why don't we just work with your realtor, you can give us a deposit and the rest we can get paid when the house closes. So we kind of touch on those avenues around finances. But for the most part, I think it's not common that people will say, oh my God, that's outrageous. Like we don't get that comment almost ever. It's more like, okay, well, when can you start? Or, okay, this sounds really great. Or, oh my God, this is just what we need. The time of financially it comes into play is once in a while they'll say, okay, maybe that's more than we can afford. So is it okay if maybe, how about if I do the sorting on my own for a little while, and then you come in and help me with the packing? So sometimes people pick and choose what works for them financially, but usually, even in that situation, sometimes people just give up. It's like, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't want to sort. Maybe I do need your help to go through these things and let's get going on it. So that happens a lot. The other part to point out is lots of people call us in urgent mode. So they have to move quickly. And so they just need somebody to come in and work with them, starting tomorrow. So there's just not enough time for a family member to do it. And that's probably one of the biggest things too, is downsizing sounds so scary to many people. They put it on the back burner until the very last moment. So we get a lot of calls, and then there's no time. This family member needs to move next week, and there's too much to do that they just need help. So does that answer your question?
Oh my gosh.
Did I ramble? Okay. I didn't ramble.
That's fantastic. And a couple of things I want to pick up on. Number one, the dumpster, right? Because when people get to the end, and I think about my brothers who moved mom from her home to an apartment, and they literally were chucking stuff in the dumpster. Now, in her cognitive decline, she knew and was upset by some of that, but they were moving so fast she simply couldn't keep up. So just hearing that we're not going to be chucking stuff in a dumpster, I gotta believe is comforting.
Yeah, we try to avoid even using the term dumpster, like all the time. Like we don't even approach that. And sometimes we do need them, but typically we almost never bring a dumpster when a client is still living in the house. Like I've had to do it once or twice because it was some urgent matter. But for the most part, I never have a dumpster there when my clients are still living there, because it breaks their heart. Even if the things are trash, it's such a negative that we try really hard to have that handled after the client is comfortable in their new house. And then my staff comes and just, does whatever needs to be done with certain items.
So dear caregivers, all of you who are with us and all of you who will continue to join us, this is the heart that I keep talking about, the sensitivity to where you are, the knowledge to do what you need done, but just this awareness that it's difficult. You're not going to be shoved into doing things that you don't want to do. So Marianne, thank you so much for that. I am curious though, you mentioned you've got kind of a buffet, pricing and things. What if somebody says, I have no idea what to do? Do you kind of lay it all out? Do you highlight for them the buffet categories that they may be interested in? And how do you, if it needs to be a stepped pricing process, how and when do you determine that?
Yeah, usually a new client visit. And I would say lots of people, they come to us not knowing where to start. So that's a very common thing that happens to us all the time. And again, I just feel like we touch on all the peripherals that need to happen. But honestly, we just focus, okay, so we need to move your mom on Friday. So what are the things we need to do so she can move on Friday? And I just keep coming back to that. So and sometimes they'll ask me questions about everything else, but when it's an urgent matter and the client just needs to move, then I almost put everything else. I keep pushing everything else back just for that brief moment, because then they just need a breather. And then once their relative or once the client is in a safe place, then they're like, okay, they take a breath, I'm like, okay, so now what do we do now with everything else? And then I'm like, okay, no problem. So these items are going to go to auction, these will ship to you. So you just have to break it up into pieces. But I think it's super important to focus on the client who's in that transition. That's the key, right? So they're the ones, even if it's hard on the kids, and the kids are losing the family home as well, which is hard on some children. Really, it's the parent, and so everything we do focuses on the parent. And there are things that come up that we even, the daughter will kind of, or son or whatever, will kind of say, you know what, mom, you don't need to bring that with you, and they'll just be much more upfront, as we could be with our own parents, where we would not say that to somebody we're working with, right? You talk to your mother differently sometimes than you talk to somebody else. And so when we see that happening, I think that's another part where we'll say, you know what, if you don't mind, why don't we go ahead and discuss what the furniture your mom wants to bring with her? And if it's, it'd be really helpful if you could just maybe start boxing up these areas over here, kind of give them a different task to do so that we can kind of handle discussing these sensitive issues with the clients. Because it's just going to just need that third person in the room who helps them over these little hurdles. So there's like this little balancing act, but we always focus on the client is in transition. They're the ones making the decisions. We don't just say, okay, you can sit here and watch us pack. We keep them involved. So we say, okay, I'm going to be packing up your dresser. Do you mind sorting through your jewelry? Maybe pick out the things you want to bring with you. So we keep the client involved. And I think that's a huge part about it too. We just don't say, okay, you could just watch us work. We kind of have them doing something so they're involved in the process. And that's huge too.
I so wish, Marianne, I knew you back in October of 2016 when I was doing this stuff with my mom. Yes, and she was mad and she was upset, whatever. So, God bless you for the work that you do. How long is a typical client engagement for you? And I know that's probably an unfair question, but if I'm one of these people that mom's got to move, she's not going to organize this, so I, as POA, am organizing it for her. What's the time span we can be looking at to downsize, to move, and then to deal with all of the stuff that she didn't want to take? Yeah,
and it's very and it's amazing. We've had thousands of clients, right? And it's so hard training new people because every client is so unique. But I would just say, for the most part, 2 weeks is pretty typical for us to kind of get someone downsized and moved. We might take an extra week then to clean out the house. So, from start to finish, 3 weeks, if we're doing, sorting, packing, moving, and downsizing to get the house on the market. 3 weeks, if we're just doing kind of the downsizing to get them moved into an apartment, that could take 1 or 2 weeks. So that's the time frame. How's that? One to 3 weeks was my final answer.
That is super efficient. Holy cow. So you mentioned the client, kind of the first meeting and the walkthrough. How quickly post that, again, probably not fair, but is there a typical time frame from the time you first meet the individual and maybe the family members, kind of assess where everything is at? How quickly then do you get started on this 2 to 3 week process?
Yeah, it happens pretty quickly. Like, it's pretty interesting. We will have people who sign up with us right on that initial client visit. So that does happen. Lots of times they'll happen within 1 or 2 days of meeting them. That's pretty typical. So it happens fast. The other thing that's unique about our business, like if you were to schedule us to work with you, like we book up, like as soon as someone signs up with us, they're ready to start. So like if I look at my calendar, like we don't have much going on, after June 7th, but we're pretty full up into June 7th. So we are very much, and I have, a pretty large staff. So we can have 50 clients going on at any one given time. And so basically everyone needs to start usually right away. Again, just that thought that people wait till the last minute to call us means they're usually ready to go. They sign up with, within days typically, and they're ready to start the next week. So that's why it's super, I'm grateful and blessed to have a staff who is flexible, because we could put the schedule out on Saturday morning and it's changed by Monday afternoon. Like it's pretty typical. So it's a very, very fluid business because people need things. It tends to be more urgent than something planned. So if people call me and say, I want to move in August, I'm like, no problem, pick your day. So it's all good. So, but that doesn't happen very often. So.
Right. So you mentioned that you've got people who come in and prepare the house and get everything ready to go. So do you call 2 men in a truck? How do you actually do the physical move?
In my company, we have movers. So we have, I think we have a fleet of 16 vehicles. 5 of them are trucks and trailers. And we have a full moving crew. I think I have 6 movers who work for me as part of my company. So for my company, I do my own moves. Other move management companies might outsource that to a moving company, but I do. So we have, and it works out super great because again, my guys will move our clients' items to their new apartment, and then they're familiar with the house and they come back and help us with the clean out. So they've already been there. So they already understand, okay, these things I'm going to come back and bring to donation. These I'm bringing to an auction house. These I'm bringing to, the landfill or whatnot. So our guys are the movers and they also haul and do clean outs with us. So for me, I feel it's super beneficial to have my own moving crew. And my guys are just, they're wonderful. They're a wonderful team. So I have my movers and my move managers, and then they kind of intermingle. Sometimes my movers help pack, so they kind of do some packing as well, but yeah.
That's extraordinary. Wow, thank you for that. So I'm assuming that being a member of and accredited by the National Association of Senior Move Managers gives you access. You mentioned long distance moves, perhaps. In my case, I was in Wisconsin, had to go to Arizona, pack mom's stuff and move her back to Wisconsin. How might that process had worked had I known you 5 years ago?
Yeah, no problem. And again, we always try to gauge how involved the children want to be, right? So we had a really unique situation where we had to move up some clients from Wisconsin to the state of Oregon. And so we had to, so my staff, did all the packing with the clients. We kind of arranged for somebody to even fly the clients to their son's house out in Oregon. And then for me, although NASM does have industry partners that we use, I actually partnered up with a local moving company who could travel across the country. So we just arranged the movers myself for my company. So we just arranged the movers. We arranged them for a move manager once they get to their new home. So again, it's that whole mixture of having a job share. So again, we would arrange my staff, kind of doing the packing, and then so in your situation, I would have contacted somebody in Arizona to meet with your mom to discuss what she wanted to bring, arrange the movers, have some video calls with you, take pictures, let us know kind of what we're planning on bringing. You give your input. We would discuss how your mom's going to get to Arizona. And then my company then would meet the movers in Wisconsin at the apartment, unpack everything. So when your mom walked in, everything would be unpacked and put away. And then you would just bring her in. And then sometimes, even if people have, gone through the dementia process, we've had situations where clients don't even realize they moved, which is like, in a sense, a really good situation, right? They don't realize they're in a new apartment because it looks just like the one they just left. And that just makes the transition so much easier for the family and the clients. So that's like the best case scenario.
That is incredible. Do you work with senior communities?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we do lots of them. Yeah. Yeah. And we actually, sometimes they even call us to do like internal moves for them, or they'll hire us. We have a couple of contracts with communities where they'll actually pay for our services as kind of an incentive for a client to move into their community. So that works out really well. So we've done that. We have communities, that we do that with, which is great too, because to the marketing folks, sometimes, the hurdle is, again, the same hurdles the realtors have. The client wants to move, but because of all these other factors, they're not ready to do to pull the plug to move into the senior community. So the marketing person then in the community will call me in to go talk to the client and just say, okay, it's no problem. We could totally move you into this community next week. We'll just go through, we'll pick out your key items. We might even say, we'll leave, you don't have to sell your house even. You could just leave your house, see how it goes, if there's no rush to sell the house, of course. So we kind of help the marketing people if there's somebody who's kind of in limbo, just because the process is so overwhelming to them. Once they hear that it can be done easily and within a week, it just puts them at ease, and it just puts everyone at ease to make the transition happen.
Well, you're a miracle worker in that regard. Holy What, and this is a question that I asked Debbie last month when we chatted, what do you not do?
Boy, so when people ask me to do things, right, I ask myself, okay, this is a need they have, and can I make it happen? Because the thing is, being in this business, you just have all these connections, right? So for example, we have a lady right now who has a dog who needs a home. So I think I've had to place animals twice since I've been in business, right? But it could be done. So I'm like, hey, no problem. I'll reach out to people that I know help rescue animals. So sometimes they need an electrician. So I don't have any electricians on staff, but I have a partner who's an electrician. So, and I have lots of partners. I have a plumber, I have a handyman, I have a landscaper, and I get all their insurances up front. So I have them ready to go. So when people say, boy, my mom really needs a plumber for her sink, I'm like, okay, no problem. Here's my plumber. So I feel like I'm very well connected, that it's very rare. And I'll use Debbie. So even Debbie is an advocate. So like, if I feel like Debbie is somebody that is on my plethora. So even though I'm not an advocate, I definitely could not do what Debbie does or even try, but she's in my network, right? So even if I can't do something, I think I have enough resources around that there's it's really hard for me to imagine something that people say, do you do? And I just say, no, I can't do it, sorry. Like it's I can't honestly, just sitting here, like we sell cars. There's almost nothing you could throw. We had to move a chandelier once. I'm like, oh my God, how do I move a chandelier? So if we haven't done it, I feel like if the client needs it done, then I need to figure out how to do it. You know what I mean? So we work with people in hoarding situations. I guess I will say, if you know, I have my limit. I have said no to a house with raccoons. So I have said no if it's a hoarding that um, I don't even have an out for, which is really hard to find someone who can handle raccoons in a house. So I do have situations where if I just don't have anyone in my network, which you know, and I could probably find one if I really had to, but it's only happened once. But so there are times where if it's a hoarding situation that my staff can't handle it, then I might say no and refer them out to somebody and just totally give that job away. But we've worked with plenty of people in hoarding situations because we can handle it for the most part. I have staff who's capable and the client truly needs to get out of that situation. So we have worked with a ton of amazing situations where they're living in a really truly unsafe environment, and we were able to help them remove things, get into a safe environment, either to stay in the house or to still move on. So yeah, that totally didn't answer your question, but maybe it did.
No, you did. I want to make sure I'm not muted. Gosh, there are just so many things here. What strikes me the most, listening to you, Marianne, as we have each time we've gotten together on these chats, is just the comprehensive nature of your ability to think through what the situations may entail, obviously with lots and lots of experience, good and bad. I'm sure you could tell lots of stories that would probably curl our toes. But this is the richness of the networks that we're really trying to bring to our caregivers to let you know, again, you're not alone. There are all these amazing people
Right.
I didn't know, but I am getting to know, and really on a mission to share the wonderful things that you do and the way you do it. I could talk to you for hours. I want to respect time. Before we open it up for questions, though, what one bit of advice, Marianne, would you offer to the caregivers who are with us and who will see this particular session over the course of the next year or years?
Sure. And I think that working with caregivers and adult children, I don't think it's really hard to really understand how difficult this transition is to leave a family home that you've been living in for 40, 50 years. And as a child, a caregiver, it's really hard to walk in the shoes of the person moving. So I would just really encourage them to be as patient as possible. And I would try to encourage downsizing earlier rather than later, just to kind of get a feel for it. And I would always encourage starting in a room that's not very important, like kind of going through a side, you know, an extra bedroom or the basement. The other thing that I think I've noticed along the way is it helps the client in transition if they can give an item to somebody they love. And so and I know we can't take our parents' hutches, we can't take their dining room sets, but if there's something that's small that your mom really wants to give to you, sometimes just say, you know, Mom, thank you very much. I will take that item. That makes her feel happy because you know she's giving to somebody she loves. And then you take it and you just take it. You know what I mean? And if it's something big and you can't do it, then say, Mother, I really can't take this. I appreciate it. Let's give it to somebody who can use it now. But if it's something small that you could just take, it just brings happiness. It doesn't happen in a rush mode. So that stuff happens if you have months or years. So if they want to give you something while they're thinking about it, I think that helps the process a lot because they're very afraid their kids are going to come in and just throw everything away. So that's their fear. So I would just encourage children to just take the small items if they can, big pieces, say, you know what, Mom, let's find somebody who can really use this hutch or use this couch or use these mattresses or use these blankets, whatever. Just try to get them over that hurdle that we're not going to throw it away, that people need these items and you use them and love them, but let's give them to somebody who needed them. So just trying to help them with that, I think is what I really encourage caregivers to do. So that's my big tip.
I love that for so many reasons. It's heartwarming, number one. It really brings unity and closeness to a family that may be anything but that, right, in the moment. And it really helps people understand caring for each other, even outside the family. So I love the way you said that. Let's find somebody who really would appreciate and could use this.
Right.
What a wonderful family event or activity to do along the way to helping mom or dad or both move to someplace different, smaller, hopefully safer. Right. Marianne, this has been just delightful. I want to open it up to our guests. What questions do you have before we start wrapping this up?
Thank you.
I've got a question for you, Marianne, and I've been aware of your incredible team for such a long time, and I'm always struck by the patience that you bring to your clients and the psychology that you bring to your clients, because there is quite a bit of psychology involved here. My question to you is, we often work with folks as patient advocates that are not necessarily moving yet, but we're helping them through pivots of perhaps coming home from the hospital and getting home care set up, or possibly transitioning to memory care in the near future. So it's kind of on the horizon. What we so often see is not hoarding situations, but a lot of folks that have massive collections. And sometimes there are safety concerns, sometimes there's cleanliness concerns. What would you suggest to us as a kind of a quick way to say, we have this friend, Marianne, and her awesome team. How can we get you to their house to start to talk to this? I really struggle with that.
Sure. And I think we have, through NASM, has a safe at home, aging in place idea. So basically, we go in and we've done it a number of times. So we had a lady who couldn't leave the hospital because her house wasn't in a condition to leave it. So, and her husband was living in the house. So basically we came in and it was a process. So we said, okay, and again, the project was too big for me to even talk about it in the big picture. So we said, okay, we're going to start with the kitchen. So how about my staff comes in, let's just make the kitchen safe. We're just going to make the kitchen safe. So it could be that there's moldy food. It could be, we just need to make it safe. So it usually takes cleaning. It takes, some things can go out to be donated or sold. Some things need to be disposed of. So sometimes we say, you know what, let's just have Marianne's team come and start with the kitchen or the living room. And then we get that room so it's safe. And then we move on to the next room and make that room safe, and you work your way around the house. I think that's been my best approach for, and again, it's not even, sometimes things are, they're not even, it's not a hoard situation. It's that things are out of control situation, right? And so we just take that approach and hey, we just need to, and there has been situations where it was, it just needs to be cleaned before we can even work in there. So in that case, I actually sent in my cleaning crew to clean it before my staff would even start downsizing. So that gives you an idea of the level of jerks that needed to go away. So, but once I go, it's a situation, I go there and I meet with them, like, wait, before my staff can start sorting and downsizing, we just need to, this floor hasn't been cleaned in 50 years. We need to clean the floor. So I send my cleaning.
Exactly. These people have been living like this for a long time, and there's no judgment that this is how they live. And I understand. But when a hospital discharge planner is getting pressure to discharge this patient because they're not appropriate to stay in the hospital, that's a problem, and we have to move really quickly. So I appreciate your team's work very much. And what I'm hearing from you is that if we can make this kind of bite-sized and more palatable, that's often the best way to approach it.
It works really well. It really does. Yep.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is that I've had the pleasure of being a part of one of the moves with Marianne's team. And I observed, and I worked with seniors for many years, so I knew what I was getting into. What I didn't know is that she truly does have an answer for everything. I was amazed. So one of the observations I made was the home that I was in with her, one of her team had, the husband had passed, and he was a professional photographer, I think it was. And he had all kinds of equipment, a lot of it very outdated, very old. And there wasn't a hesitation from her team saying, oh, we've got a buyer for that. Oh, we've got someone for this. We've got someone who would really be interested in that. And they weren't just saying that, it was true. That just blew me away. So when she says she's got people, she really has people. That was one
component. It's important. Yeah.
And the other question I have for you is, you know, I work with a lot of people in the senior industry, and people who serve seniors, realtors who specialize in working with seniors, move managers, lots of different organizations and types of businesses. And I want to understand, because I'm always telling them the number one partner they need to have to be successful in serving their senior clients is a move management company. It's the number one thing. It's what holds everything back, from the senior communities move to a realtor's getting a move and all those kinds of things. How do you speak to those organizations, those professionals, to help them understand the profound value that you will bring to their part of the process and their part of the equation, I guess?
Sure. And I think it's really, and I've invited realtors to come with me on the new client visits before. And I think that's actually a really great way to do it, because again, I'm very much like, I'm very much like, we just kind of we kind of explain what we do, we put it out there. But at the end of the day, we are like zero pressure. And I think that's really important too, for the realtor to see that. So I like having the realtor with us, because, you know, we kind of go through it and we say, okay, if we have, like, it depends on where they are, right? Some clients need to sell their house before they can move. So that's a pretty common thing financially speaking. So when the realtor is with me, we'll say, okay, why don't we just identify what's going to be new apartment, other things that, you know, the family is going to want to come and look at or keep. Let's just box it up and store it in the basement or the garage, so it's out of sight, so it doesn't keep the house from going on the market, you know, from going on to market. Like, we have to still put things somewhere. They have to go somewhere. So we kind of walk through that, how that's going to happen. But again, even in that situation, we're still discussing what the client wants to bring with them. So first we get that piece solved, and then we're like, okay, everything else now, they want this basement empty, so where is this going to go? And then we tell the realtor, okay, you know, we can, if the client's comfortable, we could start sending some things to auction, donation when they're living here. If they're not comfortable, maybe we could put it in a storage unit until the family wants to come and look at it. So we just kind of go through these different, you know, what if. So it's kind of the happy medium. But at the end of the day, oh, and the other thing is, sometimes realtors will ask me, okay, are we going to have an estate sale? And that's one that I usually tell a realtor, you know, we typically don't have estate sales. I may have arranged for one or two in the past 7 years. Like, it doesn't work for us, because that holds the house from going on the market. So it could take 6 weeks to arrange and have an estate sale. So I usually tell the realtor, you know what, if there are things of value, we're going to send them to auction, but the house then can be ready to go on the market in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever our time frame we're working on is. And so by saying that helps the realtor know, okay, that's great, because, you know, this is the time to sell a house, and if Marianne can get it ready to go and we don't have to wait for an estate sale, they like that piece too. So I think having the realtor's input and working with them is pretty helpful.
For all of the caregivers who have joined us, thank you. This is why we're doing it, because we so want to support you wherever you are on this journey, make it easier where we can. And as I said in the beginning, to make sure you know you are not alone. So don't try to do it alone. You can find our full schedule of compassion chats, along with recordings to former chats, on my website, susanamarshall.com, along with a copy of the book, Mom's Gone Missing. Also want to invite you wholeheartedly to join us next month, June 22nd. Speaking of realtors, our guest is going to be Bruce Nemowitz, who has been not only in the real estate industry for a very long time, but he's a wonderful human being. I know you will enjoy him. We'll hope to see you again. Bring your friends, bring your family, June 22nd, 6 o'clock Central. Thank you all for being here.